What if you still want it all again? You don't have to tell anyone, but sometimes you do. That thought comes back, lingering. That feeling that it wasn't meant to end this way. You want to go back. But not for just anything. Only for what was real. For what made sense even when everything around felt wrong. But no one sees this from the outside. Because those watching see strength. They see someone who has moved on. But they don't know what remains unspoken inside. Some feelings don't turn into bitterness. They just stay quiet, held inside, waiting for the right moment, waiting for courage, waiting for that person to understand what they might already know, but haven't yet had the courage to face. It's not drama. It's not weakness. It's just a clear realization that what happened isn't something you find again out there, because it was intense, it was rare, it was real. And even with everything that went wrong, the connection stays alive, silent, present. You feel it. You feel it when you think about what could have been. You feel it when you close your eyes. You feel it when the world quiets down and only the truth that no one sees remains. It has no name, it has no explanation, but you can sense it. Because it pulses, because it calls, because it insists. And then comes the question, is there still a chance? Does that person feel it too? Is the waiting mutual? And is it just missing someone to say it? Or will you spend your whole life pretending you don't feel anything anymore, when inside everything screams the opposite? What if you still want it all again? Stay quiet. Just listen. Don't try to protect yourself now. Don't cross your arms or close your heart. Don't rationalize, don't run, just feel. Because there's something inside that hasn't passed. And you know it. Even without speaking, even without admitting. There's a part of you that's still there. In that conversation that was interrupted. In that message that was never sent. In that goodbye that didn't end right. Does it hurt to remember? Maybe. But it hurts even more to pretend you've moved on. Nothing of this matters anymore. This person. You don't name anymore, you don't mention, you avoid. But it only takes a tiny detail, a scent, a word, a familiar voice, and everything comes rushing back, with intensity, with clarity, with that feeling of, it was real. It really was. It wasn't made up, it wasn't exaggerated, it wasn't projected. You felt it. And you still do. Because this story hasn't truly ended. It was interrupted. It was left in a corner because maybe it couldn't continue. Or maybe no one had enough courage to keep going. So now what? Now you pretend you've moved on. But inside, you're still very much alive. You notice this in your silences, when no one is looking, when no one expects anything from you. Deep down, and there's still a question that never got answered. Is it still possible? It's not about returning to the past. It's not about nostalgia. It's about realizing what has never stopped being present. Because you can't force yourself to forget. You can't kill what was real. You've tried it all. Ignoring, letting go, moving on. But some things can't be solved by distance. They are resolved with presence, with truth, with maturity. This person you pretend to have forgotten, maybe they are on the other side feeling the same thing, or maybe they aren't. But what matters now is not the other. It's you. Can you be honest with what still pulses inside you? Can you admit that there are still unanswered questions, that there are still unspoken desires, that there are still parts of yourself that have only been seen once by that person? Do you remember when the world stopped for a few seconds, when a simple glance was enough, when a touch felt like an entire universe? Do you remember how you felt when you heard that voice? How time changed its pace when you were together? It wasn't words, it was perception. That feeling that life made sense for a moment. Even when everything around you was crumbling, even when chaos existed, even when there was pain. There was presence. And that isn't found just anywhere. So now what? Now you try to fill the void with noise, with new stories, with distractions. With ready-made phrases like it's for the best, it wasn't meant to be, life goes on. But inside, nothing fades away. Because this story doesn't bind you, it reveals you. It reveals what you truly feel, what you truly need, what you're afraid to want again. This person wasn't a mistake, they were a mirror of your most sensitive self, of your most pure self, of your most authentic self. And that's why it hasn't passed. It's not obsession, it's not stubbornness, it's perception. Then comes the cutting doubt. Does this person feel the same? Are they waiting for a gesture, a word, an action? Are they, just like you, also hiding and feeling? Have you ever had this feeling? That someone is still connected to you inside, even after the silence, even after the other stories? If so, comment. I needed to hear this, because there are people who pretend they've moved on, but only need a chance to say, I still feel. Now look inside, without fear, without judgment, without the need to appear strong all the time. Does this person still affect you? Do they still touch you, even in silence? Do they still appear in your most involuntary thoughts? Are they still in the background of your favorite songs, in the strangest dreams, in the empty spaces that no one else has filled? Do you feel that if you could say everything you haven't said today, maybe something would change, maybe something would be reborn, maybe the cycle would be different? And if this person were waiting for the same, would you have the courage, or would you let die again what was never buried? You realize you're different, that today you feel more deeply, that today you understand what you didn't before, that today you no longer want to waste time on what is shallow, on what is half-hearted. So why do you still deny yourself the right to live what is real? No, I'm not saying to rush back, to relive everything without thinking. I'm saying to listen to what's inside, to stop lying to yourself, to stop hiding behind whatever, because it doesn't work, it never did. It was never just anything, and you know, that person knows too, even if no one says it, even if it's never spoken. So now, pause. Silence. Breathe and feel what this evokes in you. Don't try to fix it. Just feel. If you're still here reading, it's because some part of you needed this truth. Maybe not to act today, but to recognize, to name what has been hidden, to let the truth flow through you, even if it's in silence. And I'll tell you outright, you still want it. Not every day, not in desperation, but with that calmness that only what is genuine brings. You want it, because you know what it was, because you see what it still is. You know it's not just nostalgia, because nostalgia over time gets tiring. This feeling, no, it doesn't get tiring. It transforms. It learns to wait in silence. It watches you from within while you pretend to live other stories. How many times did you try to say, I'm fine? How many times did you hear someone say to forget, that it was just a phase, that it would pass eventually? But that moment never came. Not because you didn't try, but because it wasn't meant to pass, it was meant to be noticed. To realize that there is something greater than time, greater than logic, greater than well-laid plans, something that simply is, even if it's no longer, even if it has no name, even if no one believes. And that's okay. You don't need to convince anyone, but you do need to look within without pretense. Because as long as you keep pretending that this story was just one among many, you will remain empty. You will continue repeating lukewarm relationships, incomplete dialogues, shallow exchanges. Because when you experience what is deep, nothing shallow satisfies. And sometimes that person wasn't everything you wanted, but they were everything you felt. And that is much rarer than it seems. You can spend your entire life surrounded by options, but this will never replace a connection that fully runs through you, that reads you, that listens to you in silence, that doesn't need to explain because you already understand. And that person was that. It was the place where you took off your armor, where the world stopped for a moment. And for the first time, this you were you, whole, raw, unafraid. And now you live trying to return to that place without knowing how. You want to understand why this still beats? Because you never surrendered the same way again. Even if you tried, even if you swore to yourself you would love again. It's not about loving more, it's about loving right. And that you only felt once, because it wasn't perfection, it was truth, and that's what's missing, that's what hurts. You are tired of games, tired of relationships that seem real but aren't, of conversations that drag on without touching, of people who are there but don't feel and what you had felt. And no matter how everything fell apart, only those who have felt this know the absence it creates. It's not attachment, It's perception. The perception that there's something that still hasn't been completed. Something that might not even need to return, but needs to be acknowledged, felt, concluded. Because moving on isn't pretending nothing happened. It's facing it and saying, this still lives here and that's okay. You feel afraid of seeming weak for admitting all this, but do you know what weakness is? Continuing to live superficially out of pride, avoiding love for fear of breaking, closing your heart, and then complaining that no one gets in. The strength lies in feeling everything, and not running away. In being whole, even if it hurts. In recognizing that story shaped you, changed you, showed you what's possible. And maybe, just maybe, it showed you what you can still live, but only if you stop hiding. Have you ever thought about calling that person? Have you rehearsed messages you never sent? Have you written entire texts and deleted them? Do you know why? Because deep down you're waiting for a sign, a movement, a gesture. But what if that gesture never comes? Will you let everything die out of pride? What if that person is waiting for the same thing? What if it's just this? Two hearts locked away, afraid to be the first to open up. How many feelings have you buried out of fear? How many times have you held back the truth because you didn't want to seem vulnerable? And now you're here, reading this, feeling, wanting, but still unsure of what to do. So listen. You don't have to decide right now. You don't need to act. You only need to allow yourself to feel. Because what is real and is never lost, it just sleeps, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for years. But it wakes up, with a scent, with a dream, with a memory, with a phrase like this one. You can go your whole life without doing anything about it. You can keep saying, it was better this way. You can convince yourself it was just another story, but there will always be an emptiness, a void that has no name, a presence that no one else fills. And if you're willing to face that, something might just be reborn, not in the same way, but with the same truth, and sometimes that's all you need. You're still hiding, but you have nowhere left to run. You can't pretend anymore that what you feel is all in your head. It isn't, it never was. You tried to convince yourself of that and failed. You tried to silence your inner self and failed. You tried to move on, but took everything with you. That person is still living there, in the details, in the subtext of conversations, in the comparisons you swear you don't make, but do, in the space that no one else has filled, and maybe no one will fill it. Not out of inability, but because certain spaces have a unique shape, and that person is exactly that shape, the one that fits where you thought no one else would. It's scary, isn't it? Scary to admit, scary to reopen, scary to try. Because when you feel deeply, you know what you could lose, and when you've lost once, it's hard to take the risk again. But tell me, are you going to keep living half a life? Are you going to spend your days avoiding pain and with that avoiding life too? Will you settle for relationships that seem real but don't truly connect? You deserve more. And you know it. You just haven't been able to own it yet. Own the truth. Own the desire. Own the vulnerability of looking someone in the eyes and saying, I still think about you. Maybe the other person thinks about you too. Maybe they feel the same way. But someone needs to make the first move. Someone has to let their pride go. Someone needs to speak the truth. Someone has to open the door that both of you left ajar. What if that someone is you? What if your courage is the chance this story needs to come alive again, this time the right way, with the maturity that wasn't there before, with the silence that taught you, with the awareness that only pain has brought? And what if it actually works out? Have you thought about that? You spend so much time worrying about what can go wrong, that you forget to consider that it might just go right, not like it did before, but like it is now, with fewer expectations and more presence, with less rush and more authenticity, with less fear and more openness. And maybe that's all it takes. That person doesn't need to come back the same way. You don't need to either. What needs to return is the connection. What needs to be remembered is what you both awakened in each other. Because it wasn't just love, it was recognition. You saw each other like no one else ever has. And that doesn't just disappear. It doesn't die. It can be forgotten. It can be stifled. But it only takes a little bit of courage and everything starts to breathe again. So now if you've made it this far, It's because some part of you is still alive, you still want, you still feel, and I'm not here to give you easy answers, just to remind you of what you already know, but pretended to forget. This story wasn't just any story, and you aren't just anyone. If this has stirred something you've tried to silence within, give it a like. It shows me that more people are living what remains unnamed. Comment below, I needed to hear this, or I still feel, if this message resonated with you. And if you want more content like this delivered straight to you, subscribe to the channel. This is where we talk about what no one has the courage to say. Share this video with someone who feels the same way but has never spoken up, because there are truths that only heal when they are heard together.